Hello, here I am again with Tim Ferguson at the Meeting Show in London with the Meeting Design Institute talking about multi-hub meetings. Tim, you were a facilitator in Fresh, beginning of 2018, which was a multi-hub meeting. The second time Fresh went multi-hub with 4 cities. How did you think that was going to go before it actually happened?
I think I was probably a little nervous, wondering if the technology would hold up, wondering if the connection would really work. I think we've all had the experience of webcast style multi-hub meetings that are really just a glorified VC and video conference, and you don't feel that it was one meeting. And all those fears were eliminated.
Yeah, so a video call would normally take like an hour or sometimes 2. This was a 2-day conference, so it's quite long with speakers in 4 cities, and you were in Basel in Switzerland, your hometown, so to speak, where your company Audience is based out of. What do you say after? Now it's over, you've been there as a participant. What happened,
First of all, I'm a true believer from the experience in the power of multi-hub. I felt truly connected to the people in the other cities, Johannesburg, Copenhagen, and the UK and London, as well as we had 1 hour where we patched in Philadelphia. About 200 people in a room in Philadelphia were patched in. And I felt viscerally, like at the end of the day one, when we were all going to our apéro in Basel, it felt bad that my friends and colleagues from these other 3 cities weren't coming with us. Yeah, and then signing off by the end of day 2, I felt like I really got to know the people in the other hubs. And what was amazing is this has got nothing to do with high tech. We're not talking telepresence. We're not talking goggles and holograms. It was the intelligence of the agenda, our shared interest in the topics of the agenda. So in one hand, multi-hub meetings change nothing about meeting design. The right objective, the right people in the room, and the right speakers and facilitators. So that you had that down.
Yeah.
And then the way the technology, though, did allow everyone had a microphone, everyone had a close-up camera on them when they were speaking, and everyone could see everyone else when it mattered. And I felt like it was a combination of the way you run a television studio, where a floor director has got camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, and calls the shot the moment the conversation switches from one person to another. But in your case, you had 16 cameras, 24 cameras, something like this. And I just felt that the intelligence of the switching from one shot to another was such that you started quickly to forget that you were in these different locations. And it became about the conversation you were having, not about the technology. And I don't think that took more than 3 hours before we weren't focused on the technology, how we were doing it. We were talking about, we were worried about the conversations we were having.
Yeah. So I also noticed that, for example, Elling, who's done this as a facilitator, he was in Copenhagen this year for the second time. How he had become more fluent as well in interrupting, and in having that conversation from Copenhagen to Basel and to London, and Sam Allen, who also did a great job in London, who was a newbie as a facilitator and as a multi-hub facilitator, but she was quite spontaneous, and she could interrupt you, for example, and have that back and forth conversation. So that really felt like, people are in the same space.
Yeah, there were moments of conversations like this one where you're not asking me a question and I'm answering it. We're bouncing off each other. And that started to happen within the hub, like hub to hub. That was an incredible feeling.
As a facilitator, how different is it from facilitating a single venue event?
I think a couple key differences or just things to be mindful of. One is the idea of working from the outside in. So you're live in your room. in your hub.
You're on stage in a way, yeah.
People see you. They have a more direct connection with you, and they feel very included in your facilitation. So you've got them. They're your home base. So if you're going to say, okay, let's get into it. Let's hear some points of view. Don't start with your room. Start with the other hubs. Telegraph as well. So say, okay, we're going to open up the discussion. I'm going to want to hear first from Copenhagen, then London. Then let's go to you, Johannesburg. So people see the pattern. They see the rules of the game that you're creating. Quickly correct people if they're not using the technology properly. So if they're not looking at the camera, if they're not holding the microphone close enough, if they're not turning their mic on or off, ask them to speak up, ask them to speak to the mic. So make sure that people very quickly adjust to the fact that, in a way, you're on television.
So what would be your main tip to meeting planners if they want to get a multi-hub meeting running in their company? How do they convince their boss?
Well, I think one would be an economic argument, and you take the total cost of the flights that you're not putting people on, and the total cost of the hotel rooms that you're not spending money on, and you put that number on the table. That would be step one. Step two would be get a quote from a company like Abbott that would let you understand the cost of the technology. And that cost is not staggering at all. I think the bandwidth for the Wi-Fi is the most important thing to get right from a technological point of view. Everything else is fairly quote-unquote standard. The other thing to think about is, rather than putting a whole bunch of people facing one big stage that has to be brightly lit and a lot happening on that stage, you're creating almost like multiple television studios where what matters is the kind of shot that we've got on us right now. So the staging goes from a big stage to lots of small pieces, lots of small cameras, lots of small microphones, and the all-important tech crew who's doing the switching. But I think you put those numbers together. You say, okay, reduce the staging, reduce the hotel and flights, a little increase in some type of tech that's new to you, and you have your multi-hub meeting. So that's an economic argument. The other argument is people's time. I don't know if you remember, we saw a really interesting presentation in our meeting from the business school and a PhD who had done research on matching meeting platforms with objectives. And they had teleconference, video conference, telepresence, and face-to-face. So let's call telepresence that kind of high quality ability to interact one group to another. It outperformed face-to-face on multiple meeting objectives. And we talked about why that might be so. So you think about the difference between get up in the morning at home with your family, kiss the kids goodbye, go to a local venue, maybe to your office, and engage in a significant discussion with people from around the world on a topic that matters to you. And then at the end of the day, say goodbye to your colleagues, get in the same commuting pattern, go home, spend your night with your family, and having dinner. Imagine that same meeting where it's like 36 hours of travel to get there to a different time zone, jet lag, 36 hours to get home, just enough time to get jet lagged again. Compare those two experiences.
Yeah. Big difference. Okay. Thanks, Tim. Thanks for sharing your experience with the Fresh Conference and the multi-hub aspect of it. Have a good day.
Thank you, Maarten.
Thank you.